Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, July 25th, 2022, and I'd ask that everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins.
Here.
Mr. Brado. Here. Mr. Olgiati.
Here.
Mrs. Rose.
Here.
Mr. Tominella.
Here.
Mr. Witt. Here. Mr. Verkost.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes from July 11th, 2022, approval of the bills in the amount of $2,064,084.01, approval of the June 2022 revenue and expenditure report, approval of the 2022 annual dues for SEMCOG in the amount of $2,918, and approval of the 2022 mid-year fire budget amendment, and approval of the Knights of Columbus annual Tootsie Roll Drive for September 30th through October 2nd, 2022. Unless there's any amendments, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
A motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mrs. Rose. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next, approval of the regular agenda. Board members, I'm not aware of any revisions to the agenda, and if there are none, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Brado. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next on our agenda is announcements. I do have some announcements. Our Harrison Township Library is taking a field trip to Lake St. Clair Metro Park for fun with pond critters at the Nature Center. Kids will learn about pond habitats and will make a take-home painting. Our Harrison Township Fire Department is coming to the library for an educational opportunity. Mark your calendars for August 12th for a fun story time and demonstrations by our fire department. A fire truck will be on site for exploration by children after the demonstrations. For more information on these and other great library community events, you can visit their website at htlibrary.org, call them 586-329-1261, or email them at librarian@htlibrary.org. The Festival of Lights on the Clinton River is scheduled for Saturday, August 6th. Boats will start lining up at 9 p.m. before the journey down the river. For more information, you can find it at jobbycrew.com or contacting Lambrecht Marina, which was formerly Barclay Marina. The Harrison Township Fire Department currently has an open eligibility list. If you would like the chance to become a part of our elite rescue team, you can visit the fire department section of our website. Our Parks and Rec Committee is hosting a free concert at Waterfront Park Thursday, August 18th from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. as part of a Concert in the Park series. Light snacks and refreshments will be sold. The third concert will feature Doing Time. The Harrison Township Senior Center hosts a monthly casino trip on the last Friday of every month. Space is limited for these trips, so please call for details and registration. The Senior Center also features chair yoga Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. for seniors to increase their strength and flexibility, as well as an aerobics strength class on Mondays at 1 p.m. The Senior Center also hosts bingo every Wednesday at noon and euchre every Thursday at noon. For more information on times and events, you can call our coordinator, Jen, 586-466-1497. And as always, for more information on these as well as all other township events, you can call the supervisor's office at 586-466-1445. Visit our website, www.harrison-township.org, or follow us on Twitter at HarrisonTWPMI. I just put a note because I thought you might want to make an announcement about the upcoming election.
Yes, actually, the clerk's office will be open this Saturday, July 30th, from 8 until 4 a.m. or 4 a.m., I hope not, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. For the processing of absent voter applications. So if you can't make it during our normal business hours and you need an absentee ballot, you can stop by with photo identification and we'll take care of you then. If not, the polls will be open on Tuesday, August 2nd, from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. You can go and vote in your normal precinct. If you have any questions about anything or what you need to do, you can contact the clerk's office and we're happy to help you out.
Okay. Any other board announcements?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I just want to mention that our AV vendor came out to reinstall the soundboard. When they did that, they got reoccurring static as we had before. And as you notice, they took a mic because they're trying to recreate the issue with the static. So just bear with us a little bit longer. We're going to have to record the meetings and play them the day later, so we won't have streaming just yet.
Okay. Any other board announcements?
Yeah, I don't know if you skipped over it or just, we have Engine and Eats on August 6th. So
It's an Anchorman thing. I just read what I was doing.
I figured as much. So it starts at 12 o'clock, 12 to 3. If you're presenting a vehicle or a piece of equipment, we ask that everybody be settled in by 11:30 because people usually end up early. We're going to have hot dogs and snacks and bounce houses and everything else as we had last year. So again, that's August 6th. So you can, when you get done with there, go take a nap and then go do the parade of lights. So,
Perfect.
same day.
We want to acknowledge that Mr. Olgiati's company, Luigi's Original, is a sponsor of that event.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have an event sponsor amongst us, yes, so wanted to thank you for that, Paul.
And we had an excellent turnout at the concert in the park last Thursday. Sold out, like literally every parking spot was filled and even the grass areas. So make sure you get there early for doing time in August. It's definitely a fun night.
Yep.
And it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
Mhm.
Yeah, some people wanted to pay me to park. I'm like, no, it's free.
I think it's so nice to see boats, I'm sorry, I think it's so nice to see boats in the water too, out there.
Yeah.
Just kind of floating out there a little bit, and up there was a ton, but I think it's gonna be, become more and more of a popular event on those particular nights, so it's nice to see a little bit of activity in the township on a beautiful Thursday night, so.
Absolutely. Well, good. Well, thank you to everybody who was involved in planning that. Any other board announcements? Hearing none, I'd like to acknowledge our county commissioner, Mrs. Barbara Zinner. She's come this evening to give us an update on county issues.
Thank you. Good to be here, good to see you all. Everybody's been busy through the summer, of course. I couldn't make Thursday night's music. I was at the first one. I had grandchildren to attend to last week, which was, of course, a lot of fun too. Especially the 2.5-year-old, trying to keep up with her is exercise, but it's all good. I would say county news. We didn't have meetings last week. We got our meetings more put together, so we were not meeting and then we're meeting and then not meeting. So we will be meeting next week, and I can't remember if it's 2 weeks together. Things are just happening. Of course, you know the roads are everywhere. We're doing a lot of things in Harrison Township right now. Catching up in Harrison Township everywhere, as you know that. Everything I think is, well, there have been a few things in the news, I think. You've seen that. Everything is pretty stable in the county, I would say. I know everybody's interested in the elections. I've been making phone calls. People, it's great about making phone calls is people, I always say, do you have questions? And some people have a lot of questions. They have questions. Everyone has a question. Not everyone, but some people have questions about things. That's great about that. I think people are enjoying the summer. Either they're in air conditioning or they're having fun, and that's what's great. I was going to say I didn't get to see the boats in the water the last time with the music, but people just enjoy Harrison Township and the shores. Everybody's just having a great summer, I think. I don't want to take any more time up here. I wish you could ask me questions, I know you can't. But everything's pretty, I think, on an even keel right now. And when I was there, the parking lot was full, they were parking cars just everywhere. Everybody wanted to be there, so everybody should come. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we'll move on to our next item in the agenda, which is item D1. Spot right there. From the building department, regarding circuit court action for demolition at 30361 Mans. Board members, our building department has been working on enforcement at this location for several years. There has been court action in district court, and it has not resolved the issue. Most recently, a safety inspection revealed that the exterior and interior of the house is in major disrepair and the house is uninhabitable. Included in the attachments are quotes from the township attorney for a cost for the court action, multiple quotes for demolition, as well as photos of the house. Items not accounted for are removal of the large boat in the river, an asbestos study, and removal. For reference, in 2018, we did have to have an asbestos study done at another property that we demolished. That cost was $400. And the abatement of asbestos at the other location was $750. Now, obviously the study is probably a fairly fixed price. I'm not saying that $400 is the going rate from 2018 to 2022, but the removal cost is clearly dependent on the amount of asbestos that might be located in the home. Hard to say in this house if there's any asbestos, more or less, but those are some reference costs. We also contacted a contractor to estimate a cost to remove the boat, and we had a range of $4,500 to $7,500. The current request before you is to authorize legal action in circuit court to pursue demolition of the structure, and those costs are anticipated not to exceed $5,000. We felt it important to include in the board packet the total cost to resolve the issue, which could reach $30,000 to $40,000. So we might spend $3,000 to $5,000 on legal action. Once we get permission from a judge to proceed with this issue, we're probably looking, again, $30,000 to $40,000 total costs. It's important to understand that if we follow through on this, if the board chooses to go forward with the legal action and we're successful in court, which we would anticipate that we would be, and we do accumulate these costs, we can lien the property. Liening the property doesn't guarantee collection, but one of the reference points we sort of look at is if we did lien the property, does the value of the vacant lot with the lien exceed the value of the lot? For reference, this is a waterfront lot. And although we can't predict how long this would take and what the economy might do between now and then, currently, if this lot were vacant and all issues were resolved, the value of that vacant lot would exceed $30,000 to $40,000. So as a board member, I'm comfortable asking for the legal action because I know the legal action will lead to potentially more costs, but net cost of that property, should we acquire it through tax reversion, is greater than the $30,000 to $40,000 of total cost to abate this nuisance. And obviously, although it doesn't appear that we have any neighbors here, the neighbors are hopeful that we do proceed with this to resolve this issue. Any discussion, or is there a motion?
I make a motion to file in circuit court for demolition at 30361 Mance at a cost not to exceed $5,000.
All right, is there support? Support by Mr. Barato?
Yes.
Okay.
And even in the end, if we didn't recover our cost, enforcement has a cost. And we continue to have enforcement costs associated with this project, with man hours and that kind of stuff. In the end, even if we were short, it brings a conclusion to the matter that has it involved hours of our building department and code enforcement's time.
And our attorney's time in district court, because
Correct.
while that's a part of the retainer, we'd like to think that we don't take unnecessary action in district court that leads to accumulation of hours on behalf of our attorney, which should ultimately be reflected in our annual fee. So this would hopefully bring some closure to an ongoing issue over the course of many years, and as you might have seen from the photographs, it's pretty rough, so.
Is the gentleman still living there?
Yes.
Not that I'm.
Still living there?
Yeah, I think on and off, I don't think constantly, that is, yeah, yeah. But I don't know that it's
Full-time.
full-time right
Yeah.
now, right?
Oh, boy. Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Brado to file in circuit court at a cost not to exceed $5,000. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next, we're running down to page 89. If you're following along. Next one is from our fire department regarding our heart monitors. Board members, our Harrison Township Fire Department is seeking the approval of Zoll Monitor Expert Care Extended Warranty and Preventative Maintenance Contract. These are 4 of our older monitors which are still eligible for the extended warranty through Zoll. The monitors are over $40,000 in value each. Repairs to the monitors can be very costly. Our fire chief sees this as a cost preventative contract that will serve the department well. There are warranties on the 2 new Zoll monitors, and they have already paid for themselves. Attached is a proposed contract with a cost not to exceed $14,000. And the recommendation is to approve 4 Zoll monitor extended warranties at a cost not to exceed $14,000. Discussion or a motion?
Make a motion to approve the extended warranties at a cost not to exceed $14,000.
All right.
Support.
All right, support. So this is kind of one of those things, these companies regularly service them. This is obviously not something you want to not work when the time is important, especially if it's you.
This is the second extended warranty purchase we've made on these. And
Yeah.
and I talked to the chief, because I'm like, hey, I just want to make sure these are the same ones, and he said, we've way exceeded the repair cost on the first time we purchased them, so.
And I really think this is kind of a two-way street. The manufacturer, supplier of these products, it kind of goes into it knowing, hey, look, I'm giving you a deal, you're paying for this extended warranty. At some point, when I come to you and say I'm unwilling to extend the warranty, you're kind of tied to buying new equipment. So if they don't treat you well during the warranty period, you start to think twice about renewing your relationship with that supplier by buying new equipment if they didn't treat you well. So good or bad, I think this is the cost of doing business, but
So, I don't know if you'll have the answer to this,
I'll make one up.
not without a mic. So, do we have 6 total?
It would suggest at least 6.
So I
I'm
guess my
thinking
question is, we're gonna
3
do,
and 3.
well, there's
three
4 that they're asking for 2-year warranties.
Yeah.
And 2 we've already used the warranty. So at what point do they say it's no good, we need to buy 2 new units? Because that
Yeah, or
would put us,
4, yeah.
yeah, it would put us in a 3-year cycle for these things. So I'm sure the chief probably considered that, but I didn't know if you knew.
Yeah, so as I'm doing the math, I'm thinking of 3 squads that we have, so 2 in a backup and 3, apparatus. So that would, mathematically, I'm thinking 6, right? But I think this is one of those scenarios where, and good or bad, and I don't think this is unique to Zoll, so I don't want this to sound like a negative. I think this is one of those things where had we gone with another supplier, they're gonna do the same thing. In other words, they're gonna offer warranties for a period of time, and they're gonna say, if you have a problem, we're gonna do our best to make sure that piece of equipment is back in service. But at some point, we're gonna say, sorry, we're not servicing it anymore, so you either run with scissors, or you better buy a new piece of equipment.
Yeah, I was only, maybe I can talk to the chief or the message came back. Could we get out of the 2-year warranty if we bought 2 new ones? You know what I'm saying? If they're getting at the end of their life cycle,
Yeah.
eventually, to your point, they're gonna say, I
Right.
can't put a Band-Aid on it anymore.
And I think the answer from having served and bought these more than once, it's always cheaper to extend the warranty, because I could buy a brand-new piece of equipment, and they can say, yeah, we're having a problem with that, we're gonna come out and give you a loaner, and we're gonna service that. So I don't think it's a function of saying,
Okay.
well, this piece of equipment is 6 months, 18 months, 24 months old. It's a function of whether or not they say, we're gonna jump on this and either give you a replacement or service it on site, or, you know, swap one out, versus saying, hey, you're on your own, you're beyond the warranty.
Yeah, I know
Right.
that some of this equipment, sometimes if they take it in on trade, can be sold to other folks, so there's it's
Right.
like our vehicles, right? There's,
Right.
at some point, there's value in it.
Yeah.
At some point, there's not, so I would just, I guess that was, obviously, I support this, but I was just wondering, at what point do we not buy 4? Maybe there's an opportunity down the road to get something out of the old one, buy 2 new ones, and then we've got 2, if you will.
My conversation with the chief, I am confident that this is the financially and, this is the best way forward financially, as well as, in other words, if they're still servicing them, if they're still warranting them, they're treating this just like it was a new piece of equipment under the original warranty. It's a function really of when they say, we won't warranty it anymore, we won't offer service, that's when you're kind of taking a chance, and we have historically at that point said, hey, look, they won't extend the warranty, now we're looking at either replacement equipment from the same supplier, or we're unsatisfied with that supplier, we want to switch to a new supplier.
So piggybacking off what Mr. Bracken said, what's the life expectancy on this equipment?
As long as it's under warranty, I mean,
Well,
within
but-
reason,
but
right?
After
Yeah.
it's out of warranty, is it 6 years, is it 8 years?
No, once it's out of warranty, we have historically
Okay.
not said we're just gonna keep
Okay.
them. Because if the unit doesn't work and we say, hey, we have a problem, now we're swapping equipment from one vehicle to another.
Okay.
This is kind of one of those things, like how much risk are you willing to assume?
Right.
I recognize that if I were to have a medical event in Harrison Township, there isn't probably a better place in southeastern Michigan to have that event. But I recognize when I go up to deer camp, I don't have that same security
Yeah.
net, right?
Fairly
But
up-
there might be a guy in that, right, when you're up there might be a fellow who shows up with our used heart monitor, and it might still be working. But we have historically not operated under, hey, let's hope it works, right? But admittedly, you're gonna pay a lot less in property taxes for fire service at deer camp, right? So it's kind of one of those things, you know, is that where you visit or is that where you live? So, having said all that, is there any more board discussion?
Nope.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Olgiati to approve the 4 Zoll monitor extended warranties at a cost not to exceed $14,000. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is item F1 from the treasurer's office. Mr. Tominelli.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So board, the Charter Township of Harrison Public Library would like to invest their available funds in Public Act 20 securities. The library has created an investment policy which will be invoked in unison with the township's investment policy. As statutorily required, the township treasurer will be managing library investment accounts in partnership with the library treasurer and the director. In addition, a new requirement for participation in the Michigan Class or Michigan Cooperative Liquid Asset Security System requires approval from the Township Board of Trustees to open an account. So basically what I'm asking for is, and just to give you a little background, the library has showed interest in investing in Michigan Class. The township has a account in Michigan Class. I opened that over 1.5 years ago. At that time, they didn't require any kind of resolution from the township board. Since then, they've implemented a policy where you have to have a resolution or an agenda item with approval from the board to open up a new account. So that's part of the motion as well. And with that, I guess I'd take any questions.
So really, before us is a policy. Is it a form of a resolution?
Well, no, this is just an agenda item, and that's all I need to open the Michigan Class account.
Okay.
But what I've included the library's investment policy.
Mhm.
I've included the resolution to invest funds in Michigan Class, that came from the library as well.
Gotcha.
And then also I included in a library investment process, which we worked with the attorney and with the library director, then I made some final changes, and that's just an internal policy or process of how we're going to handle it, because funds have to be identified by me, sent to the library has to identify what and how much they want to go in each security, and send it back to me, so there's gonna be a lot of back and forth, so I wanted to get that documented for future investments as well. So
Okay.
those are the 3 documents that I've included.
And these investment vehicles, are these risk level wise and percentage level wise, are these, 8%, securities, or are these 0.5% banknote type things?
Yeah, so these are public act. Michigan Class has basically 2 security offerings in their portfolio. And it basically what Michigan Class is, it's a conglomerate of many municipalities, most of them in Oakland County, where they pool all their money and they invest their money. So it's a flat rate, and I believe right now it's 1.56%. So it's it's low income and low risk.
Gotcha.
So this is where they want to start, and I'm also working on opening some other accounts for them as well, where they can get a little bit more return. But they want to start here and start slow, so I wanted to accommodate and grant their wishes on what they wanted to invest in.
So this is reflective of their policy, and because it has to go through you statutorily, you're kind of proposing a policy
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
Okay. Any discussion, questions, or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Charter Township of Harrison Public Library Investment Policy, investment process document, and creation of the Charter Township of Harrison Public Library Investment Account with the Michigan Corporate Liquid Asset Security Systems,
Also known as Michigan Class.
Michigan Class.
All right, good. Got a motion by Mr. Badkins. Is there support?
I'll support that.
All right. Any discussion?
So basically, the money, Mr. Tominello, is just like the firefighter's pension, all the other pensions, the way that's invested, and it goes through your office, and
The way the library is set up as far as their structure, and this was the charter set up, that was set up years ago, is that everything goes into general fund. Because everything goes into general fund, I must be the custodian of those funds. So rather than me investing independently, I'm taking basically cues from the library to invest. And it'll be in a separate sub-account, so we'll track that as such as well.
okay.
But you, statutorily, you have a fiduciary responsibility to oversee this, so this is
Yes.
kind of formalizing
And
the
I
process.
have to move funds in and out, right, because.
So if the library said, hey, we want to invest in something crazy, there's a point where you say, wait a minute,
Yep.
you've got some oversight. By no means is investing in Michigan Class crazy.
Oh,
It's
no,
pretty
no, it's
conservative.
very conservative.
Yeah,
So you have Michigan Class over here and you have Bitcoin over here.
right, exactly.
Some-
There you go.
there you go.
Good
Is there a timeframe that has to be invested for?
Michigan Class, one of the reasons that the interest rate is so low is because it could be as little as a day.
Okay.
You can pull the money out pretty quick.
Mhm.
Rather than, with a lot of the securities I invest in with Huntington and Robinson Capital, they're securities that may be a 30, 60, 90-day note, which that money has to be tied up for that amount of time. So I think that's what the library's trying to do. They want to get their feet wet, they want to make a little bit of money,
Okay.
and they want to sort of experiment. And I'm trying to guide them through and maybe push them to a little bit more, to a few more securities that may make more money with low risk and low term, or, short term.
I think your last comment just clarified my answer, but interest on the money, does that go back to the library or does it go
Oh,
in the
yes,
general fund?
back to the
Okay,
library,
all
yeah.
right.
Well, it goes to the general fund, but it's
Right.
booked to the library.
Okay, all right.
Yep,
And just like interest on the water and sewer accounts would go to them,
Okay.
interest in general fund, go to general funds.
I wasn't sure how that flowed through, so I appreciate
yeah,
that.
it's all booked separately, yeah.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Batkins with support by Mrs. Rose. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda, item G1 from the clerk's office. Mr. Witt?
Yeah, it says from the clerk's office, but really this is from all of us, right?
It's true.
This is,
Someone's got to talk.
Yeah, well, so.
They took my microphone away.
At our board meeting on June 27th, ordinance 404 was introduced to amend Chapter 18 of Charter Township Harris's by creating Article 7, which establishes the township sidewalk maintenance and repair program. provides for repeal or severability penalties and an effective date. The ordinance was noticed as required in the paper and available for review at the clerk's office for anybody that wanted to come see it.
All right, any discussion, or is there a motion?
I have a quick question. I couldn't find in this today, nor in the ordinance, and I probably just didn't see it, but when do we determine that a sidewalk needs repair? I know we've talked that it's a 4-inch differential or whatever, but where is that noted?
You know, I don't think it's 4 inches.
Or what is the
I think
inches?
it's less than that. Yeah, but, you know, it's a good question. I think there's a standard for that, and I don't think it's incorporated in our ordinance because I don't think we set that standard, but I'm
I don't
not
think so
certain.
either. I'm just looking at 18-400A, Section A, where it just talks about free from defects, maintaining good condition and of good repair. I think just generally, we don't have it exactly laid out of what, objectively what that is. I think what we may do here is what other communities have done is just asked somehow for it to be marked, maybe as an intern at the engineer's office or summer helper could do a walkthrough, take some pictures, give us some feedback as to who should get a notice of what the sidewalks look like and what needs repair.
Yeah, and I don't know that we necessarily want to codify it in the ordinance. We certainly wouldn't want a scenario where we arbitrarily apply different standards in different locations.
Right.
But I think there is, well, I'll just say because after we discuss this ordinance, I'd like to discuss the figures that the board asked me to produce. And I can say in the brief analysis that I did to try to generate this, it's really not a very black and white. It's really difficult to say what's hazardous. You can assign numerical values to a dimension, to things like that, or a mismatch. But if you had a series of sidewalk slabs that were on such an angle that it might cause you to be out of balance, even though progressively they had less than 2 inches of change, you might look at that and say, hey, this tree is just causing 3 slabs to really be out of position. So there is a little bit of a, I'm not really sure what the word is, a little bit of a expert opinion or, a common sense analysis that it might not be able to be captured in saying, this is what defines a hazardous. And for whatever it's worth, and Mr. Huth, this is good and bad, part of the reason we're looking at this ordinance is because most often it's kind of harvested from other municipalities, meaning I don't think other ordinances also define specifically if it's this, therefore it's
Okay.
hazardous, and if it's not, then it's okay.
All right, I got you.
There is, in the Michigan state law, which another section of our ordinance refers to, it says a vertical discontinuity defect of 2 inches or more in the sidewalk.
That would be what.
Or if there's a dangerous condition in particular, so there's a little wiggle room in it.
Right. So, and our ordinance references that act.
Yes, yeah.
So, is that a fair answer?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, discussion about the ordinance or a motion?
Well, I see that you provided the sidewalk replacement estimate, and again, I could have missed it in reading through this, because I was like going through it with a fine tooth comb, but I could have missed it. Are you suggesting that we might make these repairs?
So this is, so and I'll say this, and I did get a call from one of the trustees. I feel that there's really 2 issues here, and I didn't put this on the agenda because I felt like this was something that the board had asked me to produce and we need to have a discussion on. I feel like there's really 2 issues before us. One is a very black and white process that we use for adopting ordinances. We've introduced this ordinance. I'm hopeful that the board will adopt this ordinance and put it into play. Once we do that, and if we do that, then I think there's value in prior to our next agenda item, having a discussion, because this board did have discussions at length, not only as a board, but I know from some residents that have contacted me lobbying for saying, hey, you know, how do we treat existing problems? So per the board's direction, I guess 4 weeks ago when we introduced this, the board member said, hey, where's that estimate for replacement of sidewalks? I said, oh, I didn't realize that this was coming at this time. I'll have it for the next time, so I do have that, and I think we should have a conversation on it.
Right.
But I don't believe it affects whether or not we want to adopt this ordinance. In other words, we either want to pass on the cost for repairing sidewalks to our residents, or we don't. If we don't, then we need some other method of, some other system of repairing sidewalks, because absent an ordinance, it's gonna fall on us. So I fully intend to have a discussion about this after we might choose to adopt this ordinance, should the board choose to do that.
Thank you.
So the effective date of the ordinance is August 26th. Is that, that's what I see at the bottom of it. Second publication date,
Yeah, it's 30 days after date of publication. It usually will take us maybe a week or two to get it in the paper, depending on
So it could be later
timing.
than that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say exact date. It's,
If we published it tomorrow, then you'd be right, we probably can't publish it
I'm
tomorrow.
guessing probably 45 days from today would be a safe bet.
Yeah, early September is probably when it's in effect. But that is the process. I don't know that we're looking to speed that up or.
no, I was more interested if we decide to pass this or approve this
Yeah.
ordinance, is the sidewalk replacement. If can't get replaced till the spring, you know, does that really affect the effective date is only,
The effective date is only this ordinance. This ordinance doesn't preclude us from saying, I'm gonna come out and fix a piece of
Okay.
sidewalk. Only if a majority of 7 people say, I vote to fix that piece of sidewalk. So we can
Understood.
still spend money and perform work independent of if or when this is adopted. So it
Okay.
doesn't, the two, to that point, the two are really truly independent of each other.
okay.
So adoption of this ordinance to me is, for lack of a better word, sort of a robotic or mechanical process of us putting ordinances in place to govern the township. How we might treat existing known concerns is completely separate from that, and this board is empowered to do nothing, everything, or anything in between.
And how much do we have in our budget every year for sidewalk replacement?
You know, I don't know offhand. Historically, we've put in it seems like $5,000 or $10,000, a nominal amount. I mean, not to say 5,000 or 10,000 isn't significant in some senses, but it's, you know, on a budget our size, it's not a significant amount. It has historically been when we have a flag here or there
Sure,
that has a
sure.
problem.
I like the paper that you came up with on a sidewalk replacement estimate. I think it came with consideration of the different properties we've discussed
Mhm.
in the past, so I appreciate you compiling those numbers for us.
Sure, I will promise I'll give a thorough explanation on that. But again, I really feel like what's before us right now is either we're moving forward with an ordinance that in essence mirrors Mount Clemens, Clinton Township, Chesterfield Township, and St. Clair Shores, or every contiguous municipality to us, or we don't. To me, that's the question right now. Once we resolve that, I think there's a separate conversation.
Then I'll make the recommendation to adopt ordinance 404 to amend chapter 18 of the Charter Township of Harrison Code of Ordinance by creating Article 7 to establish the township sidewalk maintenance and repair program for repealers, severity, penalties, and effective dates.
All right, is there support?
I'll support the motion.
All right, and a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Olgiati. Discussion board, we have had some, but is there further discussion?
I guess, to Mr. Rose's point about, I just perused through Mount Clemens, and theirs is a little bit clearer, just a little bit clearer. And I think you had mentioned, Mr. Verkes, that if we say it's 2 inches, somebody trips and falls on 1.5 inches, then is our ordinance really protecting us as we want it to be protected? So it's doing the way it's written, I believe it's doing the best it can
Mhm.
for the clarity of it, so.
Yeah, you could trip on a 1/2 inch and sue me.
Right.
Doesn't mean you're gonna be successful, but you
Right.
can do it, right?
Right,
right? And so the more things that we do and the more systems we have in place to actively solve these issues, the harder it is for a plaintiff to really succeed at any significant, settlement or cost or, lawsuit, litigation. Doing nothing, bad option. Doing something, everything that we do, every step we take to try to maintain sidewalks is a preventative measure that minimizes our litigation. But I don't think there's anything we can do that I could say to you, there is no risk or there's no potential risk for litigation because we have this in place.
Right. Agreed.
Further discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Backens?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Tominelli?
Yes.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Burkowski?
Yes, thank you, Board. So that takes care of the mechanics of having a system moving forward. It'll take some time for it to be in effect. But certainly a big part of our discussion throughout this was, we'll say, as far back as fall of last year, we had been contacted by residents in a few different areas, pointing out some issues or deficiencies with sidewalks. In the short term, we made some temporary repairs in some locations, but this board had asked me to try to give them some sort of estimate as to what that cost might be. So I've identified 4 locations that I'm aware of that have been brought to my office. First is the Glenmar subdivision. This would be between Ashland and Coleridge and roughly between North Point Parkway and Shoreline. So what is that, Norcross, is it Bellingham? Those are a couple of roads in there, if that gives you a reference point. So looking at a list, and again, this is very, very thumbnail. This is, one of the residents in that neighborhood said, hey, look, here's some areas that they've identified that could be problematic. Sometimes you can grind differences in the pavement, and if there's one flag that seems out of place and it's not driven by a big tree root, it just seemed to have settled different than the others, sometimes you can just grind the lip off. So, some of these variances in the quantity of flags are kind of associated with that. Without saying I'm going to go to each location and specifically take a tape measure and do an analysis, from the data that I had, I tried to get an approximate quantity of flags. Excuse me. Again, as a reference for estimating purposes, we saw when we initially introduced this ordinance that Mount Clemens in 2021 had identified a cost of $160 per flag, which they identified as a 5-foot by 5-foot section of sidewalk. So they had a contractor who was willing at a large scale of replacing flags with cement to say, hey, we'll do it for $160 a flag to remove and pour. Again, to try to be as conservative as possible, I used a number greater than that. Since that was 2021, we've experienced inflation and we don't know when this work would be done if it were to be done. But I used a cost per flag of about $200. Willow Bay Estates had identified approximately 5 flags. Again, could be greater or less, could have changed since these issues were identified.
Where is that, please?
Willow Bay would be the end of North Point where it hits South River Road. So that neighborhood that would be immediately across from South River Elementary, kind of...
To the west side of the street, it spurs off of North Point to the west.
Yeah, so it would be sort of like between North Point Parkway and Sonins, if you think about that, back in that area. And although as you travel along South River, and there's some sidewalk there that goes from North Point Parkway towards Sonins Party Store, that wooded area that you see is a part of what I believe to be some sort of a natural easement associated with the development of that neighborhood. So Willow Bay Estates would be those initial few homes on the west side of North Point Parkway, and that would be south of South River Road. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Yes.
know where you're at.
Okay. Orchid Street is further down toward Middle School South. That's a much more narrow street, and there are a lot of large trees that have caused a great deal of damage to the sidewalks. Those sidewalks are more critical because the street itself is narrow, there's some on-street parking. But that's the poster child there, right there. There's a lot of areas along there.
Yeah.
And again, so I identified 100 to 120. I do have, and this was not, this is the result of township employees that had walked that section, identifying addresses, quantities of flags, and problems that are associated with that. Some of them, there was a note in spring of this year that maybe they could be ground. That could have changed. A number of them, I would say probably not quite 50%, but quite a few of them are caused by tree roots. So, looking at, again, what some of our neighbors have done, they might identify saying, hey, if you've got a root that's causing this problem, before we're gonna replace that segment of sidewalk, we're gonna cut out or grind out that section of the root. In some cases, so I just, again, nominally from the list, identified maybe 20 locations where we might have a $250 cost to grind out or remove a section of a root. That's a guess. I truly, this isn't the kind of work that I do.
Yeah.
That's my best guess at what that cost might be. But looking at it, if you'd hired somebody with some sort of a piece of stump grinding equipment or other equipment, if you said, hey, I need you to go 20 places, I'm thinking, that's, a fair, $10,000 to go around that neighborhood seems like, I guess 10 or 5. Did I estimate that wrong? It's 5,000, I think.
Yeah.
I got 20, I got 5,000, so that's a little bit high. So it's conservative.
So if I'm not a botany expert by any means, but if you grind a root on a tree, does that root come back?
Sometimes,
Sometimes it goes back.
sometimes it does, sometimes it kills the tree.
Well, that's
Which
what I'm gonna
leads to
ask.
another issue, which is
Well,
why I
that's-
put
That's
it.
my whole thing, sorry.
Right.
If David's calling up and saying, hey, you grinded my root and replaced my.
My tree's
sidewalk,
dead.
now my tree's dead.
Right,
I
so,
mean.
right, which then means that now you're making a decision to say, well, the root at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 can be cut and ground. The root at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 needs to be cut, that tree needs to be cut down. So I'd included a line item for about 5 trees to be removed at about $1,500 a piece.
Doesn't
Could be
make
more
any
than
sense.
that.
It doesn't make any sense for us to repair the concrete if the same problem's gonna happen. I mean, we all know by walking up and down the bike path, probably 95% of the problems in the bike path are related to tree roots. So it's
Absolutely.
gonna continue happening over and over again. I mean, if the bike path is a property for everybody, it's public property. If
Sure.
it happens on private property, you're opening up another.
And if you walk that street, you might ask yourself, why did somebody think it was a good idea to plant a silver maple
Right.
in a 4-foot span between the curb and the sidewalk, right? But I
But they're
don't
also
get to go
problem,
back
I mean,
to
they're
that.
problems 60 years in the making at this point.
Correct.
It's not,
That's
you know what I
right.
mean, like, we can cut
Yeah.
the root and it's not a problem for 40 years, so.
Right.
Unless
you
he
know.
dies in a year.
Well,
Well,
and
yeah, I mean, that's-
so which was the reason why I had said, again, budgetarily, there'd be some locations where I think we could stand and say, you can probably cut this root away and pour this sidewalk, and we have reason to believe that it's not gonna create a problem in the near term.
Right.
We'd have others where you'd say, this tree it's so encompassed this sidewalk, we either need to swale the sidewalk around that tree or remove the tree because it's problematic. And again, this is part of that, and boy, and I want to be really careful. As a trustee, we kind of look, at this level, we kind of look at this and say, hey, I'm painting with broad strokes. You know what, we should be fair to this person or that person. But sometimes when you get right out in the field and you're standing there and you're saying, wait a minute, I see like 8 trees we're gonna have to remove, and they're probably about $1,500 a piece, maybe some of them are more than that. I mean, maybe one tree's only $1,000, but maybe one of them needs to be topped and brought down in sections, because God knows there's not enough room to drop that tree. I mean, if you drive down that street.
So I guess this would probably be an answer or a question for Mr. Huth. What's our liability if we go and make that decision to do something with that tree from a, is there liability on us from the property owner standpoint if they come back and there's damage done to their property or how
Well,
does that?
we wouldn't take any action without giving notice, first of all, and then we're talking about items and trees or whatever that are in the right of way. And so I would say that actually, less liability by taking action than ignoring problems and not acting on them, so I wouldn't say there's a big issue.
Yeah.
And again, no matter what action we take, there is no action where you say, well, this one has a risk and this prevents risk. It's almost, it's really shades of gray, like,
Right.
okay, have you done nothing? Yes, we just ignored the problem. That's probably your greatest risk.
Sure.
Did we take steps to try to mitigate or solve this issue? Let's say we cut away the roots of a tree,
Right,
and over the course of 5 to 10 years, the tree appears to be dying.
right.
If we're not notified of that, then, you'd say like, well, how do I have liability? The person's
Right.
looking at this tree and branches are falling in their yard over the course of several years.
Sure.
You didn't tell us that you had a problem. How do I bear responsibility for it?
So liability with the tree is probably less than a tripping or falling liability, basically, then. I mean,
I would say, yeah. In other words, yeah, doing nothing means that if someone injures themselves, we're talking about this publicly,
right.
right? We're in essence declaring to the public that we recognize that there are significant hazards on Orchid Street. Doing nothing about it is irresponsible. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to spend upwards of $40,000 to resolve the problem. We could notice every person who has a bad flag of cement and say, you got 60 days to fix it once we have an ordinance that is in place. I'm not suggesting that we should or shouldn't do that, but this cost estimate is before you because this board seemed concerned that there might be some responsibility on the township to address some of the issues that we were aware of prior to the adoption of this ordinance. My best guess is 50 grand. Again, it doesn't include administration, doesn't include inspection. Soliciting bids for this doesn't come with a real cost. I'm not gonna invoice because Joe and I solicited costs, or our public services director went out and met a contractor there to do this. There would be presumably also labor spent, working with a contractor to repair this work or to make a decision in the field to say, this tree should come out, this root should be just ground away. And the cost could escalate. You could walk this section. Someone might take a more liberal approach to replacement of sidewalk than I might. So Crocker Avenue is a section where folks have emailed me saying, hey, there's a couple areas here that are a concern. We have addressed some of them. No matter what ordinance we have in place, as I mentioned before, Crocker Avenue sidewalk goes underneath I-94. There's a stretch of it that's really not anybody's. I could whine to MDOT forever, but it's probably cheaper for me to just say, hey, look, include those other 3 flags in there while we have a contractor out there because, $600-700 is probably a cheaper solution than pestering somebody at MDOT. So there's some of this that kind of, falls into a gray area, but clearly, if we were to make a decision to address existing problems, I had frankly, when we were talking about this, I'm sure it's a matter of public record, I estimated this would be a 6-figure cost. It doesn't, I can't make these numbers to be 6 figures.
Right.
Again, this is a supervisor creating a cost estimate. I'm not a cement contractor, I don't cut down trees, but I did my best to come up with some sort of an estimate. That $50,000 is plus or minus 50% as far as I'm concerned. I'm not that good. I don't, this is what I do. But it doesn't appear to be a 6-figure issue, should we choose to go ahead. So, considering that, if the board wished to address existing locations, then I would propose that we might act in this manner. We have, to date, requested our engineering firm to prepare a bid spec for bike path repairs. And we see bike path repairs as kind of a global, benefiting everybody kind of a thing. The contractor who might do bike path repairs may not necessarily be the same contractor who would do concrete repairs, but there's nothing preventing us from having our engineering firm solicit repairs for sidewalk repairs at the same time that they might solicit bids, whether it be the same package or something else. So I certainly wouldn't want to solicit bids if I wasn't willing to move forward and do the work, right? Doesn't preclude us if the bids come in at $300,000 and we, well, your $50,000 number was way off.
Right.
But it would seem to me that a responsible way forward, should this board choose to want to address these issues, would be to direct the supervisor to work with the engineering firm to solicit bids for repairs of this. It would likely include, if the engineer is gonna draft something, it probably includes somebody in the field going out, identifying a quantity of flags, some sort of wiggle room. We're not gonna tie a contractor to the exact number of flags, but we're not gonna say, hey, we don't know if this is 10 flags or 300 flags. We'd have to give them something. So there would be a need, and I'm sure a cost, knowing that the analysis of the bike path and the preparation of the bid spec was $6,000. I doubt that anything associated with soliciting bids for these sidewalk repairs is even beyond my $3,000 spending limit. But it would seem to be that would, I'm sorry, it would seem to be, that would be the next step, would be solicit bids, or the board says, nope, we're not doing it. We'll enact the ordinance, and then we'll tell people they gotta fix their sidewalk.
I make a motion to direct the supervisor to solicit pricing for the repair and replacement of the existing sidewalk problems, and with the bid to be brought back before the board.
Okay?
Was that repair? What was it?
I said repair and replacement. There's
Because they may be able to grind.
That's what I didn't wanna
When-
just say.
When I was
real quick.
walking sidewalks, there's a lot that can be ground.
Correct,
So,
no question.
I'll second that.
All right.
I'm working? Yeah.
Well, the
All
grind,
over.
gotcha. We've got a motion by Mr. With, the support by Mr. Bankins. Okay, and that's really in essence what I was looking for. Either this board, if this number were $750,000, the board might have said no. If it was $10,000, you'd say yes. This number, if it's in the range, then
If it was $10,000, I'd say we authorize $10,000 to go
Just
do
do
it,
it,
but
right.
yeah, we're over and above. right?
correct. So I feel like that's an informed decision. Does this board feel, is there more questions? Are you comfortable with the motion?
Comfortable.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, good, thank you, board. Next on our agenda, item H1. It's not too far, 109. Regarding our water and sewer maintenance worker. Board members, we recently received notice from one of our water and sewer maintenance workers that they were leaving employment with the township. I'm requesting permission to post, advertise, and interview for the position of water and sewer maintenance worker with a recommendation to come back before the board at a future meeting. I will let you know that since we put this on the agenda, we did have one probationary employee who did not make it through probation, so there is the potential for more than one. But the process of posting, advertising, and interviewing is the same whether I was doing 1, 2, 3, 4 employees. So a future recommendation may come for more than one employee at some point, but at this point, I'm just asking for authorization to post, advertise, and interview with a recommendation to come back at a future meeting.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mrs. Rose, with support by Mr. Batkins. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda, item H2, tax reversion properties. For most of you, this is not something new. We have received a list of properties available for purchase through the tax reversion process. There are a total of 12 properties, all of which are vacant. I do not bring a recommendation for purchase, meaning I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't. 2 properties appear to have more value than the cost of acquisition. We do not have to purchase any of these. Starting new this year, the properties are not bundled, so we can purchase any of these properties, all of them, or none of them. Board members, I did pass out to you the results of a request that I put forth to our assessor. There is an 11 by 17 spreadsheet, and I reviewed it. I saw that when I printed it, some of the numbers got kind of X'd out. But truly, the real value, and please don't misunderstand this, but it's kind of, for lack of a better word, the executive summary associated with the email from Mrs. Kopp, our assessor. So if I just take a quick look, the parcels that we might identify that have some value are the first two on the list in our packet, page 111. 24629 Shook, 24645 Shook. Both of those are, one of them is about an 80 by 250 deep, and another one is 80 foot wide by over 500 feet deep. And they have addresses because at one point they did have homes. You might know that Old Shook used to go across where I-94 is. So some of those, those are basically, Old Shook is a dead end on either side of I-94. So these are on a little dead end section on the, what would that be, the west side of I-94 and Shook. They're both buildable lots. They have sewer to them. The cost of acquisition for one of the parcels is $7,300, plus I think there's some transfer fees. The other one is about $9,800. Again, rough numbers. We're talking less than $20,000 to acquire both lots. The estimated value that our assessor came up with, $45,000 to $50,000 for one lot, $55,000 to $60,000 for the other lot. So you might argue that for less than $20,000, we could acquire two lots that have a value, acquire two lots for less than $20,000 that might have value in excess of $100,000. So the remainder of the lots have more limited value. The vast majority of them are on Detroit Street, and they're probably not buildable. The road is not platted through there, and they're pretty much marshland.
Surrounded by Lake St. Clair Metro Park property, pretty much.
Correct, right. And then the last lot that might have some value is a lot on Moran Street. It's right at the corner of Moran Street and Jefferson. It's a narrow lot at one end, a little bit wider at the other. It has more value to the adjacent property owner who might combine it with another lot and make it more buildable. I believe that it's being let go for the taxes because Moran Street was repaved in the last couple of years.
About 4 years ago.
4 years ago. And so there's an annual assessment of maybe $400 that's applied to this lot. Whoever might buy this lot, whether it would be us or whether it would be someone else who might buy it at auction, will pay that $400 assessment for this year. It's spread over a 10-year period, so a certain quantity of those have been collected. Moving forward, whoever buys it still has to pay the $400 per year for the remaining years. So I got clarification at least that if we don't buy this lot, whoever does buy it or own it has to continue to pay this $400, again, it's not exactly $400, but the annual 1/10 of a share of the cost of repaving that road. So there isn't any property on this list that we need to buy in order to protect any interests. If you remember earlier, we talked about the property on Mance. We might spend upwards of $30,000 to $40,000 between legal fees and demolition and removal of structures, boats, trees on the property in order to put that lot back to what we might consider a sellable condition. But presumably if that person walked away, they either pay us the $30,000 to $40,000 lien, someone buys it and they pay us the lien, but if they walk away for the taxes owed, the issue would be, since it's a buildable lot on waterfront, it would presumably be worth more than that. We don't have any of these properties where we have an interest or a need to purchase them. So I'm really coming with kind of whatever you think. We could buy two of them, probably have some value. We could buy all of them, we could buy none of them. And if we don't buy them, they go to auction.
If you recall, we did this shoreline and
Ashland.
Ashland. Remember that disaster where the
Yep.
trees were growing inside the house?
Yep.
And look at the house that's going up there now.
Correct.
It's gonna be a fantastic house.
Yep. We did this on Malice.
Yep.
We bought, over a course of 2 separate years, we bought 2 parcels on Malice. There's a house being erected there. I haven't been by recently, but, so we have had success. But again, with those prior cases, we bought those properties because we had an interest and we bought them to protect our interest.
Yep.
So there isn't a motivation for any of these parcels to purchase them to protect an interest.
I've always felt that was a funky part of Shook too. It's a hard area restricted to get to it. I've lived down in that area for the last 7 years, and I still can't figure out how to easily access those particular homes
Yeah,
down
yeah,
there.
it's kind of
a
remote.
weird area the way it is.
Yeah, it
You know,
is.
so-
I think it's got potential, but I also don't feel we're land developers, and if somebody sees it, they can take advantage of it.
Right.
Right, so this is one of those things where we could take on the option of purchasing them, listing them, selling them. If we do generate more revenue, there is a process that the person who, or the organization that lost them could say, hey, we want our share back. We want whatever net proceeds you made, because that was really our land. I'm gonna just say, just generically to the attorney, there's a process for it, and it seems like it's kind of going through some case law. It's not black and white right now. Are you comfortable with that?
I am in a couple of cases. The Supreme Court, I think it was Raphael, opened the door and said that, hey, if you've lost your property and the municipality makes money on it, that was a taking from you, you're entitled to be compensated. And there was another one on the Court of Appeals where class action, I think it was called Proctor. Someone said, well, let's get all that money back that the municipalities made. And the court said, wait, people haven't given notice, there's a procedure to go through, so they denied it. So there's decisions both ways, but you'd have to acknowledge at least the possibility here on both these lots that the profit, the money that's left over to you after you spent everything needed, could go back to the original homeowner or property owner.
There is, in my opinion, there is another factor. So I had mentioned that there's a lot at the end of Moran Street. So the corner of Moran and Jefferson is a vacant parcel. Adjacent to that is another 50-foot parcel, and adjacent to that is a 50-foot parcel with a home on it. The person who lives in that third lot that's developed owns the vacant lot. So it makes sense for them to say, hey, I'm gonna buy that other, this lot that's available, put those two 40 to 50-foot lots together, and I could sell one home location. And if I were king, I would say, let's buy it and give a fair price to that guy so he can put those two lots together and build. But the reality is I'm not king, and I don't know if someone else steps in and now I'm pulling strings on, well, he wanted to buy it, but he offered 500 more, and we're in this decision-making process of choosing who to sell it for and what amount. Similarly, I was contacted by a property owner at Shook and Union Lake who owns a home and a vacant parcel adjacent to his home and would love to acquire this additional 80 feet immediately behind his property. He said the place is overgrown, he's got vines growing into his property, and I said, I really, in this transitional place, I probably can't take a lot of enforcement action, but this is an issue that should be resolved in, weeks, not months. But again, if we were to purchase these lots, now we put them up for sale, do we get into a dispute or a bidding war or someone saying, hey, there's a process for auction, and there's a part of me that kind of says I don't have a reason to be involved in this. None of these lots are problematic for us. We don't have an interest in them. My instinct as one board member is to just stay out of it. But I didn't bring a recommendation because I don't have a reason to do either or.
A question, so these are vacant properties, who's cutting the grass?
Well,
Is
that's a
that gonna
good
fall
question.
to us?
Right, so if we were to acquire them, it falls on
Well,
us,
yeah, but-
right? Yeah, but as it stands right now, I'm gonna guess on Moran Street, probably the guy who lives right there who says, hey, I'm gonna cut her an extra 30, 40 feet because I don't want weeds in my front yard. Maybe but the answer is that's, when they're in this phase, when they're in this state, those Detroit Street parcels are wooded. It sounds like there was some cleanup on Shook Road, but I'm guessing both of those lots need attention. It's certainly the one that's adjacent to the resident that contacted me and said, hey, he said they came in and cleaned it out, but the weeds are growing over the fence and my whole backyard's a mess. And I had said to him, I can't really go to somebody because there's sort of no man's land right now, so.
Just curious, I'm looking at the owners of these parcels, and 11 out of 12 of them are all owned by the same corporation. Are they just speculators in the area in terms of buying property, or what's the program?
I looked
Yeah.
the organization up on Facebook. It looked like they were an organization, if it's the same, but I assume there's a lot of people named World Heritage Air Museum. They were an organization that had old jets and planes,
Okay.
and the founder passed and they shuttered the organization.
Okay.
These may have been donations to them, I'm sort of guessing at that point.
Okay, yeah.
Or maybe they were his and he just titled them in the name of the company for some reason, but, yeah.
And by no means do I wanna speculate on this, but some of these Detroit parcels have been through the tax foreclosure process in the past. And there were a couple of years where a large investor came forward and said, I'll buy everything.
Right, right, right.
And I think that they may have looked, and this was countywide, so these are residential properties in Roseville, Warren, St. Clair Shores. And I think they went through a process of saying, okay, we're gonna flip and rehab some of these. So my guess is that some of these became owned by this charitable organization. You know, if I bought millions of tax foreclosed properties, maybe I say, you know what, I'm gonna donate a bunch of them to a charity that maybe is a friend of mine or something like that as a tax write-off or something. But these Detroit properties have cycled through the process in the past.
We've seen them before.
Yeah, we've seen that with a few properties. So, well, I think the two that I pointed out have value and probably will fetch a more reasonable price. These Detroit properties, I don't think anyone's buying them. And it might be that the treasurer decides to donate them to the metro parks because they're, again, adjacent or peppered through part of the land they already own. So I wouldn't recommend that we purchase all of them. If there was a willingness, maybe those two properties I'm shook, but as one board member, I have no interest in acquiring them and going through that process. I'm comfortable with letting the treasurer's process allow them to be reassigned to someone else.
Do you want a motion to not purchase them, or do you just move on to item I?
I guess I'd rather see positive action by the board so that everybody has a chance to vote instead of failure for lack of a motion.
Sure.
That would be my comfort, so I could go back to the treasurer and say, our board has voted not to acquire the properties. I don't know, Mr. Huth, if you have an opinion.
No, that's fine, either that or receive and file, one or the other.
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
To-
I'll make a motion not to purchase the properties that are listed on the foreclosure list, the 12 properties that are on the foreclosure list.
Fair enough.
So to not purchase the properties
Not
available
purchase
through
the
the
properties,
twenty-two tax reversion process?
Yes.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mrs. Rose to pass on the option of buying this land. We had a fair amount of discussion. Any questions? Or?
Where, for resident at the end of Royan that owns that first house,
Mhm.
if he wanted to follow up on this, where would that individual have to go? Is it through the county?
The
County
treasurer conducts the auction.
Correct, yeah.
What steps they take to try to notify potential buyers, I really don't know. I mean, the treasurer should be motivated to try to get the best possible price. So as to whether or not the treasurer actually goes to the adjacent property and says, hey, you ought to know there's an auction, right? But again, it goes back to that whole point. If I were king and I'm not buying this, I'd go to that guy and say, hey, you might want to know about this, but am I sticking my nose in? Is that really my function? It's really the treasurer's responsibility to
The guy across
sell
the
them.
street might want it, or the family across the street
Right.
might want it.
And who am I to say, well, why did you call this resident? I pay taxes and you didn't call me and tell me it was available, right? So now I'm kind of sticking my fingers into a process that I don't own. If I were treasurer, county treasurer, I would have a legitimate reason to go to that property owner because he is saddled with the responsibility of collecting as much as possible to pay all these taxes.
Sure.
The treasurer's website says they host an auction for those properties the third Tuesday in July and the first Tuesday in November. So I would reach out to them if I were interested.
First Tuesday?
But, yeah, but that's already, that's a process that's probably historical and not
Yeah,
current.
I don't know if
Right.
things have changed, but that's what their website.
But the treasurer's office is where they do
Yeah,
it.
and it falls on the treasurer, and it's up to them to do it, and, you know, and the one resident I did talk to, I told him if we don't take action, then, you know, the auction would be his option. And truly, we could buy it and say, hey, you know, the assessor told us it's worth 50, so we list it for 50, and we sell it for 45. The guy might have got it for 25 at the auction, and so now I'm sticking my nose in, so.
There's a couple of entrepreneurial kids who are out there selling lemonade every day, so.
There you go. That's it. That's how
I don't
you
know,
do
They'll
it.
be able to buy that lot before you know it.
Yeah, that's right. All right, any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I've got a motion by Mr. Olgiati, and see no public comment. I have a motion by Mr. Olgiati and support by Mrs. Rose to not purchase the properties. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is public comments. They can be about any subject that you wish, and we ask that you might limit them to 5 minutes in length.
Board members, residents, C. William Bardell, 25-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder boy next door, clean up, fix up, people helping people. Just want to remind everyone, please check out Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook, press follow, stay up to date on everything that's going on. Everybody stay safe, keep cool, and enjoy your summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other,
Oh, Mr.
oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I meant to mention, the garden walk was Saturday.
Oh, that's right.
And it was wonderful, as always. Sue Keen and the beautification committee, they did such a wonderful job. And there were several houses. I do encourage people next year to go on it. It's really nice. People come up with the most interesting things in their yards. It is just amazing. You go to somebody's house, you have no idea what you're going to see. In some yards, you turn and you look, and you keep turning, and you keep turning, and you keep turning, and it's just a menagerie of interest. It's just amazing. One lady had her tree cut down, it was shaped in an owl with baby owls, and it's just amazing what it's like. It's really, really interesting. It's fun. It was supposed to rain in the morning. It didn't rain. And the beautification committee, there's people always standing by every home, waiting just to guide you, just to show you where to go, and the variety of interest in the different homes. It's really, it's just fun, and it's interesting, and everybody's nice, and so it's really nice. They just do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and so we'll close the floor for public comment. And I think it's rewarding too, because you go through those gardens, and if you've done any of that work, you realize, wow, there's a lot of work that went into this. But it is rewarding to that resident to have a number of people walk through and say, my goodness, your home is just beautiful. I mean, it is kind of its own, it's a win-win, you get to see something beautiful, and there's gotta be that reward for the person at the other end. So.
There's only one loss to going on it, is my wife said, man, we have a lot more work to do.
Honey, you should do this.
Yeah, every
Let's
stop,
cut a tree down and carve something.
every stop the list got longer.
Well, yeah, so, note to self, don't bring wife.
Yes.
Okay.
I just got one more thing regarding the concert in the park.
Yes, sir.
When we were parking the cars, I had an opportunity to speak to some folks that were parking their cars, and a family had gotten out of their van with fishing rods, and I said, oh, you guys fish here a lot. It's my first time here, right? So, they were not residents, I did ask them.
Mhm.
But then another group of young men come down looking for a place to fish, that they had gotten chased out of the 10-mile fishing pier. So they were told where to go by our neighbors, which was great. They enjoyed the concert, because I know they didn't catch any fish. And lastly was a lady that had stopped by to watch the concert, and I had talked to her. She had lived in the township 25 years, never been to that park, and actually said, I drove by it so many times I never even knew it was there.
Yeah.
So I think this is doing exactly what we were hoping it would do, is bring some attention to that. And people are looking forward to eventually, when we fix that shore up and all that stuff, and be able to utilize that a little bit better. So just wanted to touch base on that. Was a couple notes from parking cars.
Yeah.
That's it. All right, good. Any other board comments?
Just one comment, Wally, our videographer, I believe it's his birthday today, so I just want to wish
Happy birthday, Wally.
How did you find out?
Treasurer knows everything.
Okay, thank you very
Happy
much.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Wally.
All right. Any other board comments? If not, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support? Support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, meeting adjourned.